So my name is Sadaraja. If you don't know me, I'm one of the regular teachers here at the Cambridge Buddhist Centre. And well, it's my pleasure to give the final talk in the series on Meghia, the Meghia Sutta. So it's a scripture it's a short sutta from the ancient scriptures, the early scriptures called the Pali Canon. So if you hang around in Buddhism for very long, you'll hear about the Pali Canon. And it's a bit of a favourite sutta of mine, I must say. It's got some really positive associations for me. I really love it, actually. One of the associations is that in 2019, I led a retreat in India for about 80 men and women. And we did a whole week on the Meghia Sutta. And that was good in itself. But where we had the retreat was really fantastic. It's a place called Bhaja Retreat Centre in Maharashtra, India. And we've got a beautiful retreat centre. But the setting, it's in this valley with these beautiful mountains, beautiful kind of vegetation. And what's amazing is that they've got Buddhist caves, which go back thousands of years. And these Buddhist caves were actually cut out of the rock by thousands of people, and hundreds and thousands of monks and nuns used to live in these caves where they've got shrine rooms, they've got accommodation, all cut out of this sheer rock. It's hard to believe that it really is the case. And about 1,500 years ago, it was this Bhaja Valley was called the Yellow Valley, because there were so many monks and nuns wandering around with their yellow robes on that the whole of the valley used to fill up with this sort of yellow. It must have been a really amazing sight. So when I was there, I was just imagining, I felt like I was in this Buddhist antiquity with all these ardent Buddhists, and we were studying this really ancient scripture. And it was a very happy experience. It's a memory I'll treasure probably forever, I would think. So whenever it comes to talking about the Meghia Sutta, I get that kind of association. And during this series, well, we've been drawing out quite a lot of gems from the sutta. We've had talks from Arthur Siddhi, Amritchandra, and last week, Dharma Siddhi, and they've drawn out so many useful teachings. How can we get any more out of it? Well, actually, there's quite a bit more. They've sort of left the last bit to me, and that's the bit where the Buddha gives Meghia the teaching. He talks about 5 things, which conduce to what he calls the heart's release. Anyway, for those of you who weren't here, I'll just recap what the sutta is all about. Brief recap. So the Buddha's staying at a place called Chalaka Hill, and he's with a young, bit immature monk who's supposed to be serving him and attending to all his needs. But the monk becomes distracted by a very beautiful looking mango grove, which is very inviting. The hot weather, there's all this shade, beautiful fragrant smell of the mangoes. He wants to go there and meditate. He thinks he's going to make progress towards insight and enlightenment if he does that. The Buddha tries to dissuade him from doing that. He says, stay here, look after me. And so what happens is Meghia just walks away, he leaves him. The Buddha said, well, do what you want to do. So he goes and does it, and he has a really terrible time in the meditation. Instead of it going really well, he's assailed by feelings of lust and cruelty and hatred, and which is not what he expected at all. So eventually he comes back to the Buddha and explains what's happened, and the Buddha gives him the 5 teachings, which is what I'm going to go into tonight. So interesting stuff. So this is what the Buddha says when he gives him the teachings. This is what he says. When heart's release is immature, Meghia, 5 things conduce to its maturity. What are the 5? Number 1, spiritual friendship. Number 2, an ethical life. Number 3, talk on the Dharma. Number 4, applying your mind in meditation and making an effort in practice generally. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a throat. And 5thly, insight into the rise and fall with the mind that penetrates and leads to the perfect ending of unsatisfactoriness. He then goes on to advise Meghia how to overcome the mental states of lust, hatred, and discursive ego clinging, and advises him on the kinds of meditation he should practice. And it gives him a little verse of uplift to reflect upon. And I'll just recite that now. Trivial thoughts, insignificant thoughts, when followed, they distract the mind. Not understanding these thoughts, the roaming mind runs back and forth. But by understanding these thoughts, one ardent and mindful restrains the mind. An awakened one has to overcome them completely. So that's what he says. So let's have a look. So there he is. There's the Buddha sitting under the tree, and Meghia walks away. He just leaves him. He just says, right, I'm heading for the mango grove, and that's where I'm going to strive and practice. So that's the story of Meghia. That's really what it's about. It's about a young, immature monk who's a bit individualistic and wants to do things his own way. He doesn't appreciate that he's got an enlightened being with him and he's got a job to do looking after him, and goes off and strives on his own, has a bit of a tough time, and then learns and eventually learns. And there's the Buddha there who's actually able to instruct him on how to actually gain insight and gain enlightenment. But he has to do it his own way. We don't actually know what happened to Meghia after he came back to the Buddha and was given the 5 teachings. It doesn't actually say in the scriptures what happens to him. But I think we can assume that after having learned things the hard way and getting the teachings from the Buddha, he probably did well and made good progress with that. But we don't actually know that for sure. But there he was in very, very good conditions. He was living and practicing with an enlightened master. So I think we can assume that he did well. And the mango grove itself is quite an interesting place. I've actually been to mango groves in India, and they really are lovely, because often India is very hot. And you go in and it's immediately very cool. There's all this scented fragrance from the mangoes. You can pluck the mangoes off the tree and eat them and all this kind of stuff. You can see why someone would be attracted to that. So it looked like ideal conditions for Meghia. So it was a real surprise for him when things, not only his meditation didn't go well, it went spectacularly badly. To the point where it was very, very painful. He couldn't continue. And it's really interesting. I've been looking into this and the history of the scripture that this comes from. A few hundred years after the Buddha, there was a famous monk called Acharya Dharmapala, and he wrote a whole treatise on the Meghia Sutta. And he comes up with an explanation of why Meghia had such a tough time. Basically, what he says that in a previous existence, Meghia has actually been a Raja. He'd been like a chieftain. And the spot on the mango grove was where he had his palace in a previous existence. Meghia doesn't remember all this, of course. And it says, this is what Dharmapala says, he said, as a Raja, he had consorted with many dancing girls on this spot. And also he'd spent a lot of time executing bandits. The word in India is dacoits. He spent a lot of time, there's a lot of banditry goes on in India, and always has done. And he would catch them, and he enjoyed executing them on the spot. So there's a lot of unskillful activity that happened. So it's quite weighty. There's a lot of weighty karma had gone on this spot, this very spot for Meghia. So it's not surprising, really, that he goes into a space which has got a kind of very strong psychic element attached to it. And, you know, places can have those kind of associations. I used to poo-poo that kind of idea in my past, but I don't now. In a much more mild and more skillful way, I've had some experience of that myself. When I was a teenager, I worked in a slate quarry in the mountains in the Lake District. And there was a big plant near the quarry with buildings and machinery. And I used to work I was a mechanic in this garage, repairing and looking and servicing vehicles in this quarry. And I used to stand in this deep mechanic's pit all day long with my overalls on. And I'd be working away on the kind of vehicles, vehicles would come in, and I'd work away on these vehicles. And did that for a few years. And then eventually I left it and went to college, and there's a whole other part of my life started. Anyway, 45 years later, I went back to that quarry with my son, and we found that all the quarry buildings had gone. The quarry had completely shut down and didn't exist anymore. And there was just a flat bit of kind of ground in the mountains. And in the middle of that flat ground, we actually found the pit. It was still there. It had been partly filled in, but it was still there. It was a pit that I'd spent 8 hours a day working in. So I stood in it, and my son took photographs of me and stood in the pit, you know. And but what's interesting about it all was that I still have regular dreams where I'm back in the pit working on vehicles. That's 45 years or 46 years or something like that. I still have dreams that I'm back in the pit. How did that happen? So it's interesting how kind of we can have these associations with places in that kind of way. Perhaps you've got some stories of your own around that kind of thing. So yeah, I think we can relate to Meghia. You know, he was young, he was a bit impulsive, he was very ardent, but he is eventually receptive, and he does learn. And so let's have a look at what the Buddha actually taught him, because that's mainly what I'm going to be talking about tonight. So here's the 5 things. And, you know, if you can count them on your hand, help you sort of remember the 5 things. Spiritual friendship, an ethical life, study and discussion on the Dharma, applying your mind in meditation, general practice, and this interesting one again, insight into the rise and fall with the mind that penetrates the perfect ending of unsatisfactoriness. It's quite a kind of mouthful, isn't it? So I think we can say that these 5 teachings that he's given to Meghia are very high quality teachings. They can take you a very, very long way in the Dharma. And they're just as relevant today for us as Buddhists today, as practitioners, as they were in the time of Meghia. They're just as effective. And in fact, there's so much that I could say about each of these, because these are the kinds of practices we practice in Triratna. And there's so much that I could say that I'm really going to have to restrict myself this evening. Otherwise, what will happen is we'll be here all night, and people will be drifting away and getting fed up, really, and leaving, just like Meghia left the Buddha. So I'll say something about spiritual friendship. And the word we use in Buddhism is Kalyana Mitrata. It's a lovely term, Kalyana Mitrata, and it means spiritual friendship. And what does that really mean? What is it? Well, I'd say it's the most useful, in a way, of all the 5, though the other 4 are incredibly useful as well and really crucial. But the good thing about spiritual friendship is, well, if you have spiritual friendship, you've sort of got all the other ones as well. They just naturally come as part of the package. I'll explain in a minute. So spiritual friendship is that kind of helpful, encouraging, supportive, and even close relationships that we can have with people in the spiritual community, in the Buddhist community, the Sangha, as we call it. Yeah, the Sangha is the place for friendship. If you hang around the Sangha for very long, you make friends. It just happens to absolutely everyone. You'd have to be a really strange person for that not to happen. It happens to everyone. We make these good friendships. But it's not just a social thing. It's deeper than that. It's a practice, actually, making spiritual friendship with people. I have friendships with people that go back 30 or 40 years. Some of them in this room, deep friendships, and really, really matter. So you could say friendship is the lifeblood of the Sangha, of the spiritual community. It's what makes, one of the things that makes the spiritual community, along with our collective common spiritual practice. Friendship is a really, really crucial element to that. It's what holds us together. And if you're part of the Sangha, then these other four conditions will definitely be there. So ethics, if you're part of the Sangha, then, well, you'll get encouragement to work with your ethical life, your 5 precepts, and loads of encouragement. But also there's a bit of a mirror. There's a mirror. The Sangha will reflect back. I think Kula Priya it was who said, when you first came along, your language wasn't as kind of skillful as it could have been. I hope you don't mind me bringing that up. But that was kind of reflected back to you quite quickly. And I think it was the same for me. There's quite a bit of swearing when I first came along, and I just wasn't aware, and people would just sort of kind of back off. And because we don't do that in Sangha. And yeah, there's a mirror element to that. And study and discussion on the Dharma, I mean, it's quite a big subject, how to study the Dharma effectively. But in a way, it's quite easy to get into. All you've got to do is come to events at the Buddhist Center or go on a retreat, and people are talking about the Dharma, they're presenting it, they're studying it in groups. It's going on all the time. You just pick it up. You pick up all this kind of thing. And same with applying the mind in meditation, kind of putting effort into spiritual life. If you're around the Sangha, then, well, people are doing that all the time, and they're able to show you where you should be putting your effort and the kinds of things that really matter in spiritual life. I was 14 when I first got involved in Buddhism, and unfortunately, there wasn't really a big Sangha. I got involved in Tibetan Buddhism originally, and I just didn't know, because I didn't have a Sangha around, I didn't really know where I should be putting my effort. At one point, I thought, well, probably the best thing I can do is learn Tibetan, which is a complete waste of time. Well, it's not a total waste of time, but it wouldn't have got me anywhere on the path, you know, in itself. But that's what can happen. I'd have really loved, you know, when I was 14 to come along to a class like this. I'd have absolutely loved it. I'd have learned so much from people. Yeah. So, and the same with insight. You know, we've got people within the Sangha, you know, maybe they're not fully enlightened and all that kind of thing. It's not full and perfect. We've got people with a lot of experience within the Sangha, and you can have contact with them, you can talk to them. They're not wearing badges, but nonetheless, we've got experienced people who can help you on the path and show you and demonstrate what Dharma teaching and Dharma practice really is. So that's available to you. So all that comes out of spiritual friendship. So spiritual friendship and Sangha. All right. So I'm going to say a bit more about the other 4, and then I'm going to wind up. So let's have a look at ethical life. What do we really mean by that? So much has been said about ethical life. And if you've done the Transform Your Life course, or Transforming Yourself and World, you'll definitely go into that in more detail. So let me go into a little essential aspect of it. Let's have a look at There you go, that's the 5 precepts. Yeah. So if you remember, there's 2 parts to it. There's bits that you're trying to kind of avoid doing, move away from, and there's the things you're trying to move towards, which are the red ones. And it covers everything, really. It's such a radical and important aspect. I'm not going to go into the precepts because that's a whole talk in itself. So by practicing the precepts, we're able to purify ourselves. And when we do that, we become reliable, dependable, skillful, and strong. That's the outcome of practicing the precepts. We know ourselves, and other people can rely upon us. They can trust us. A corrupt man or woman is a weak person, actually, and we can't really trust or rely on people who are corrupt. And there's a lot of corruption around in the world, actually. You've probably noticed in the media, politics, business, religion. There's a lot of corruption in religion as well. And we need to move away from that stuff because it could mess our lives up. And Meghia was like that. He needed that kind of guidance from the Buddha. He hadn't fully taken on the precepts in this way we can imagine. So let's not be naive. We're living in a big bad world, and we need guidance on how to conduct ourselves and practice within that world. And if you want to live a compassionate and wise life, you do need trust. You need to be able to trust yourself. You need to be able to trust others, and you need to be able to trust the society that you're operating in. And we can define trust, you can say, as consisting of 2 things, character and competence. So by character, I mean your intention. What's your intention? Yeah, you have good intentions if you've got good character. You always want to do the skillful thing. Your motive is good. That's an aspect of trust, of developing trust and engendering trust in others. And then there's the competence bit as well, which means, well, how skilled are you in your practice? Do you know yourself well? Can you manage yourself in terms of body, speech, and mind? Are you skilled in the 5 precepts? That's what competence is all about. And I think this trust definition of character and competence, I think it applies to worldly life as well, not just Dharma life. I think it plays out in worldly life. So I've spent 21 years now working regularly in India, all over the subcontinent, doing Dharma work in India. And I often travel to places that I've never been to before. I get an invite to go and lead a retreat or give a series of talks or workshops. And very often I haven't met the people who are putting me up and have arranged that. I've never met them before. They're usually mitras or order members. And dozens of times I've arrived at airports or railway stations and complete strangers pick me up. And they care for me, they look after me, they accommodate me, they arrange everything, they feed me, they treat me really nicely, and they do everything for me. It's wonderful, but they're complete strangers. And it's never, ever gone wrong in 21 years. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of events where this has happened. Actually, I'm getting to know a lot of people these days in India, but still regularly I go to places where, so my next trip, I'm going to a place called Bhopal, and never been to Bhopal before, but there are Buddhists there, the Buddhists, and they'll put me up. And it's all about total trust. They're Buddhists, so I can trust them, and they trust me. You know, I could be stealing things from their homes, but it's never happened. It's never going to happen. And I don't think there are many situations in life where you can get that. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So yeah, character and competence. Having good character, I think, is not enough. Yeah, you need to be competent as well. It's not enough just to know the 5 precepts and how to chant them. That's not enough, really. You need to be skilled in how to practice them. And also, in order to really trust spiritual teachers who are teaching the Dharma, because don't forget, Meghia didn't fully trust the Buddha, did he? Didn't really trust it. You need to have trust in your teachers understanding his character or her character and competence as well. So trust goes both ways. And it's another one of those things that holds the Sangha together, is trust. So Meghia didn't fully realize this, and that's what he needed to get hold of. So let's move on to the next one. Study and discussion on the Dharma. Once again, so much that I could say. As I say, or if you really want to get into understanding the Dharma, probably over time you need to be more systematic about it. Learning the scriptures, go to a regular group. But as I say, to start off with, for many years, you could just simply come to the Buddhist Center and meet up with the Buddhists, go on retreat, and you'll soak it in. It'll start to happen. You'll realize what the Dharma really is. You'll get to know it, and things will flow from that. Things that you couldn't imagine would happen. I never imagined, for instance, I would ever be sat here giving talk to a room full of people, or giving talks to thousands. Sometimes I give talks to thousands in India with a microphone, which often doesn't work very well. And but I could never imagine that that could have happened. But it has, and that's how these things happen. So Meghia was very privileged, actually. There he was in the presence of the Buddha, but he didn't really fully take on what the Buddha was trying to tell him. And we've got many more ways of learning the Dharma than what Meghia had. In his day, there was simply word of mouth. That's how you got the teaching from a teacher and you practiced it. But today, we've got the internet. We've got audio we could just download from anywhere in the world. We've got events going on at Buddhist centers all over the place. We can hear the Dharma. We've got books. They didn't have books in the Buddha's time. We've got Kindles. We've got so much, haven't we? Ways of learning the Dharma. It's a wonderful thing, really. But Meghia had an advantage in that he actually had the Buddha there. We haven't got the Buddha. So we have to evoke him, imagine the Buddha, and get to know his actual teaching. Sangharakshita, our founder and original teacher, was very, very encouraging of us to read original Dharma texts. So if you can look up the Meghia Sutta online, it's very easy to find. It's very good to read the original if you can. Here in the West, we're literate. Everybody is literate. Everybody can read and write because we've got a decent education system. So very often I teach in India where people are not necessarily literate or not literate at all. And because they haven't had the benefit of that kind of system, so they have to learn in a different way. So we can just appreciate the fact that we can read, and let's take advantage of it. Let's get a Dharma book and get to know it. So Sangharakshita's recommendation is you get 2 or 3 original texts and you get to know them really, really well. And that way you'll become a real resource for people within the Sangha. And also you'll really get to know the Dharma well from just those 2 or 3 original texts. I've been doing that now for nearly 50 years. And I've just got 3 texts that I've taken. And the Dhammapada, which you might have heard of, the Bodhicharyavatara, and the Sutra of Golden Light. And I do know those texts very well now, but they all interconnect with each other. And I'm always learning new things from them. So that's a way that we can study and discuss and have discussion on the Dharma, is take on Buddhist texts that we're drawn to. Number 4, applying your mind in meditation and making an effort in general practice. So I've only got one point to make here, really, and that's about energy. Having energy to do these things, to meditate, to go on retreat, listen to a talk. So where it's 5 past, just have a look at your energy now, how you're getting on with me. The yawns are starting to happen. Kind of, right, okay. So just noticing your energy and where that's at and the time of day and all the rest of it, what you've been doing today. So, we have to manage it, don't we? It's quite difficult sometimes, having the energy available for all this sort of stuff. Well, don't worry, I'm not going to be that much longer. But we often don't have as much energy available for the Dharma because it's so easily wasted. We waste it so easily. It's so easy to do that with modern life. Yeah, I'm not talking about useful things like time with your family, rest and recuperation, leisure, relaxation, exercise, all those sorts of things. They're all really good. They're really part of looking after yourself. Now, what I'm talking about is overconsumption of alcohol, recreational narcotics, mindless television, social media, to obsession, celebrity gossip, speculation regarding the royal family, doom scrolling, internet surfing, all these kinds of things. We can spend hours every day on these activities, and that's robbing you of all your energy. Do you really need to read everything up about the royal family at the moment? Do you really need to do that? It takes your energy, if you do, in more ways than you would know. So some of these activities have got their place in moderation, but often they get completely out of control and we become addicted. If you're an addicted person and dependent on things like that, you can't really experience freedom in your life. An addicted person is not a free person. So if you want energy for your Dharma life, you need to arrange a reasonable engagement with these things and get free of addiction if you can do that. It's interesting that in the Buddha's time, it was exactly the same. There was the same issues going on amongst the monks and the nuns that the Buddha knew. And obviously they didn't have all the technology and stuff that we've got. But there's actually a sutta where the Buddha goes into this. It's called the Kartavatu Sutta. What happens is the Buddha's been out for a walk and he notices there's a whole group of monks and they're all having an animated conversation and he can just tell they're not talking about the Dharma, And so he goes to one of the monks and he says, when I'm not here and you're not studying the Dharma and not meditating, what do you actually talk about? What sort of subjects do you talk about? And one of the monks looks a bit shamefaced. And he said, so he gives a long list. And I'll read the list out. This is from the scriptures. Kings and kingly doings, robbers and bandits, ministers of state, armies and battles, food and drink, clothing and furniture, garlands and perfumes, heroes, the merits of different vehicles, the merits of villages, towns, and cities, the gossip of the street, tales of the dead, tales of diversity, and speculation regarding the world and the origin of the sea. And finally, whether things exist or not. So the Buddha kind of admonishes them all and said, none of these things are suitable topics. And he gives them a list of 10 things that they can usefully talk about, which are interesting. They're not necessarily the Dharma, but if they want a bit of light conversation, he just sees all that as being really useless. I was really quite amused, actually, by the merits of different vehicles. It's just like sort of car talk, isn't it? So, probably Meghia had quite a long way to go in this regard. But no doubt over time, he got his energy together in the right kind of way. And I think what we can say, what we can conclude is that good Dharma energy is always kind of unblocked. It's freely available. You know, you want to do something, you want to go on a retreat, you want to help some, you just do it. It's available to you. You don't have to think about it too much. And it's always mindful. You're aware of what you're doing. You don't suddenly find yourself in the middle of a lecture, think, well, how did I get here? Or a retreat. You know how you got here and what the causal links were to that. And also nothing's wasted. You're not wasting your energy all over the place. You're quite careful about how you apply yourself, what you decide to do. Yeah, some friends of mine actually went to a skill, what they called it as a skillful non-alcoholic rave. And they knew what they were doing. They just wanted to do a bit of dancing and pretend that they were still 20 when really they're 50. And they did it for about an hour and got fed up, actually. But at least it was mindful. They were aware of what they were getting into. So finally, let's look at the last one. It's really quite important, this. Insight into the rise and fall with the mind that penetrates and leads to the perfect ending of dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. So once again, I've just got one point to make about this, and that's, well, it sort of talks about, let me see, 3 elements here. It talks about penetrative understanding, rise and fall, and the ending of suffering or unsatisfactoriness. So what does all this mean? Well, actually, he's talking about what you might remember is called conditionality or conditioned co-production. It's the central doctrine of Buddhism. Yeah, pratitya samutpada is the technical term. All things arise from a cause and cease from a cause. And the rise and fall of everything that exists in the phenomenal world. So that's the teaching, and it's a very deep teaching. And some of you have done the course, you might remember some of it. You know, it's this conditionality, this constant flow of conditions which never ends, never sits still. It's going on all sorts of levels in our society. It's going on a kind of inorganic level. Yeah, rocks and tectonic plates and all the rest of it, that's happening. It's going on the organic level with plants and trees. Everything arises in dependence on condition. It's going on in kind of lower levels of psychology. You know, how do penguins find their way home in a snowstorm? We don't really know, but it's something to do with that. There's all that. And then there's this whole karmic level of, well, we're just talking about the 5 precepts. It's about action and its effect, skillful and unskillful. And then there's this other level, which is the transcendental level. That means that if we practice meditation, go on retreat, practice, it has an effect in relation to our spiritual development. Yeah, we couldn't grow and develop spiritually without this particular part. So pratitya samutpada, conditionality, is our friend, actually, if we can really see it and work with it. So I think perhaps Meghia saw and understood this teaching, just like we can. He saw it and understood it, but he hadn't gained a penetrative understanding of the teaching. He hadn't really gone into his heart in a really deep way. He hadn't had an insight into the teaching. He didn't deeply know it in the way that the Buddha did. But the Buddha is saying to him, well, this is the way things are, Meghia. This is actually what the real teaching is. This is how you're really going to gain insight and enlightenment, through these 5 things, not through with what you're doing. Actually, I think this teaching is pretty challenging for us, actually, because we don't usually want to look at it, because it contains teachings like the impermanence teaching, the fact that everything's changing all the time, all the things that we want to stay exactly as they are, like our bodies, like our holiday that Dharma mentioned earlier. You know, when you actually go on holiday, you may not want it to end. unlike my holiday last summer, when I was very glad that it ended, actually, because the weather was so bad. But yeah, everything is impermanent and changing. And not only is it impermanent and changing, but it's impermanent, it's changing all the time. It never stops. There's just this endless flow of conditions and causes and results. So if you've attended the Transform Your Life course, you've had some sort of understanding of this, you've had an exploration of it to some extent. But of course, there's so much to learn about this teaching. So if we want to really make progress in the Dharma, we've got to really deepen our understanding of this teaching, but right in our hearts, not in a kind of intellectual kind of way. We've got to really live our lives as if it's really true. So these are the conditions the 5 conditions that the Buddha gave Meghia. And they're really, as I say, they're really high quality teachings. And well, that's the end of the Meghia Sutta. But of course, it was probably the real start of Meghia's deeper understanding of the Dharma. And we can take a lot from it ourselves, just like he did. We can take these teachings on and make real spiritual progress. And they're easy to remember. You just have to like fingers of the one hand. So it's worth saying that this particular beautiful Buddhist center that we're sitting in at the moment it exists to promote these 5 things. Yeah, that's what this Buddhist center is all about. It's about these 5 things. And in fact, every Buddhist center that we have and has around the world exists for these 5 things. That's what they're there for. They're not there to make money. They're not there to be a beautiful building or a lovely garden, though those things are nice. They're here to promote these 5 conditions. And it's a place where women and men can come and learn and practice the Dharma together as a Sangha. So that concludes the Meghia Sutta for me this evening. I hope you found it useful and uplifting. And my talk has come to an end, as all things must do.